Welcome to ND and Me, a podcast to share NDers' lived experiences.
Hi, Tania. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am okay. The sun is out. There's some clouds, but the sun's out.
Yeah, it's sunny here as well, actually, for once.
So Tania, tell us who you are.
Who I am. So I am fairly recently diagnosed ADHD. I was diagnosed 18 months ago. And interestingly, I found out because I started working in the neurodiversity field for an organisation, and as a result, I needed to learn about neurodiversity because it's not my background. So I did a specific learning difficulties course, and as I was going through the course, I was like, this is feeling all vaguely familiar. So it's a bit like tick, tick, tick down the as I was going through the different challenges people who have ADHD have. And I had a bit of a light bulb moment that maybe this might be me. So as a result, because of the role that I was in, I felt it was really important for me to explore that a bit more. And so I did. So I got diagnosed back in February of last year. But just for some context around that, it wasn't a case of completely out of the blue. When I was 13 years old, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. That's quite unusual for my generation. It's obviously something we talk a lot more about now, but it wasn't back when I was at school. In fact, it was incredibly isolating. I lost my best friend. She wasn't allowed to talk to me as a result of the fact that I suddenly had this label. So it was a really challenging time, and I think for my whole entire life I've been trying to work out what the root cause of this anxiety and depression is, because it has not necessarily ever gone away completely. It's almost been stuck in this circular cycles of appearing again in my life, and it can be quite challenging to the point where I get incredibly overwhelmed and have to take time off work. So it's had a real impact on me in terms of work, and the ADHD has been, I guess, a piece in the puzzle of understanding how my brain works, and actually it's not just anxiety and depression. There is something else that's going on that is almost mixing the all three of them together, that's just creates the person that I am.
There's a Leonardo DiCaprio meme.
Right.
I can't remember what movie it's from, but he like clicks his fingers and points at the screen when like a thing happens that he like recognizes, and then loads of people have like morphed that. So I saw one yesterday that was George Lucas's face on DiCaprio's body, because David Tennant's character in Ahsoka said the opening line of Star Wars, a long time ago in a galaxy far away. So yeah, it's almost that feeling when you're looking at all this neurodiversity stuff and being like, that's
it absolutely is. And what was really funny, because I read it and I was like, this all feels vaguely familiar. And then I started testing it with people, and I sent a list of the traits to somebody who knows me very well without the ADHD label on it. And I said to him, oh, read these, what do you think? And he went, well, basically that's you on a piece of paper. And it's that kind of that validation of, oh, okay, right, so it's not just me that's reading this and thinking this, but when other people start looking at it and going, yeah, actually that makes sense. But still, like, even my sister, when I told my sister I had ADHD, because I didn't tell my family till after I was diagnosed, even she said, surely that's isn't that like a naughty boy in a classroom who is bouncing off the walls. And I think that stereotype is really fascinating, in that
fascinating or wrong.
Or wrong, yeah. In that, it's like I spend a lot of time going, I am not the naughty boy bouncing off the walls in the classroom. As you can see, I've been successful in my career. I was quiet at school. I was a massive people pleaser. I did everything by the rules. So yeah, it's just kind of getting rid of that image of what people think of when they think of ADHD. I am not that person that they instantly think of. Not everybody, but some people do.
I recently went to lunch with one of the other podcast guests.
Yeah.
And their position was autism is like a male persona, and ADHD is a female persona. So when you look at like the stereotypes of men and women, men being logical, engineering, structured, and then women just window shop, buy shit off Amazon that they don't need.
I don't know what you mean.
She's also a woman, just to flag it out there. Yeah, and then Simon Baron-Cohen talks about the autistic brain and how that overlaps on sex-based brain measurements and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting. But yeah, this whole conversation of, well, is ADHD just bored little boys? Well, yeah, but what about the girls?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of girls with ADHD, but the metrics aren't there because girls haven't been the problem.
Correct. Absolutely. So the way that my ADHD showed up at school, it was probably most obvious in my work when I hit my A levels. So looking back at my reports now, it's struggles to meet deadlines, isn't able to organise her work. So the very clear ADHD traits. Up until that point, I think I had a lot of support around me, a lot of structure around me. My son's currently doing his GCSEs at the moment, and the direction is very, very clear. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. This is what. And I very fortunately, I was a bright child. My GCSEs did lead to the last minute in terms of revision, and I managed to get through them okay by doing it that way. When you got to my A levels, though, there was a depth of information required, and my brain just struggled with it. I did my university dissertation in 5 days before it was due. I had an idea. I loved the idea, and I got some surveys done. But the actual sitting down and physically writing it was something I put off until I literally was like, I'm not going to get my degree if I don't do this. Yeah. So looking back, I can absolutely see where my ADHD showed up during my school and educational life.
So did you ever put your textbook like under your pillow, hoping that the information would like osmose into your brain? Because I definitely didn't do that for my GCSEs and my A levels, and that's why I didn't pass it. Well, no, I did all right at GCSE. But I think you're right that there is some structure about the school bus leaves here and comes home here.
Yeah.
So you have to be at school, so you might as well try to learn something.
Absolutely.
And then, I got a moped at 16 before, in year 11. So I went to my GCSEs on my own moped. I went to school on my own moped.
Yeah.
And then A levels came around, and that's where I met my now wife. I got kicked out the first year because I was a bit naughty. It's quite anyway. let's not. And then I was working. I had like 3 jobs whilst doing my A levels, and I was like, well, because this impulsive brain's like, it'd be nice to earn some money. Let's do this really cool thing. So I basically did 3 years at 6 to try and catch up to the fact that I'm an idiot. So I was working during the day and then going to evening classes, and I was studying my A2 for law and resetting my AS for law simultaneously.
I love that.
Yeah. And the year before, I was working at the weekends and had 4 A levels. So yeah, my brain has just been like cranked to 11 for ages. But yeah, just that of, can you just like sit down and do something? But you're right. There's that conversation of understanding concepts well enough to eloquently discuss them.
Yeah.
But then do you have the knowledge base to then have a deep and meaningful, thoughtful discussion on the topic of this one little element of this root of this branch of this trunk?
Absolutely.
So, I can tell you the balance symbol equation for photosynthesis. I can tell you Section 1 of the Theft Act 1968. I can tell you loads. Yeah, Section 26 of the Equalities Act 2010. I just because my brain's like,
yeah,
you need that. I don't.
No. I was also incredibly impulsive when it came to my A levels, and initially I had chosen to do physics, chemistry, and maths.
Me too. Yeah.
And I did geography.
Okay.
Business studies and English.
But why?
Literally a week before I went back to school, I did a complete. So I went from science-based subjects, very logical, to
humanities and talking about stuff.
Talking about stuff, and that was just completely impulsive. Me just going, I'll just try something different. I wish I hadn't, because I probably would have done better had I stuck to the things that I was actually good at. But and then at university, I always laugh at myself because I did a psychology degree, and I did a psychology degree because I was desperately trying to figure out how my brain worked. So it's been a lifelong trying to work out how does my brain tick. And I wonder if it's like people who aren't neurodivergent, I wonder if they had to have that same desire to get how the brain works, on the basis that it was a choice trying to help me unpick the way I felt and experienced life.
I've spoken a couple of times before, but not in a lot of detail, about almost a class-based culture where working class people aren't afforded the opportunity to have those conversations. So, I live my life through quotes. Mm-hmm. And one of the ones that my parents and grandparents instilled in me is put up and shut up.
Yeah.
Or if it's broke, fix it. And I heard one this last week. I've been watching this ex-Royal Air Force flight instructor. He does loads of like men motivation stuff. And he was talking about a guy that he was working with. They basically took a trainee pilot out in North Wales in low fog.
Yeah.
And he was meant to be like navigating, but using like a map and a compass whilst flying at 400 miles an hour. And after like 40 minutes of the instructor going, "Do you know where you are? Do you know where you are? Do you know where you are?" He's like, "No, boss, I think I'm lost." And the phrase was, "You fucked it, you can unfuck it." And then the instructor flew back to base and left him out there to figure it out. And I'm like, that's like a multi-million-pound aeroplane. You've probably been training this guy for like 7 years, and you're just like, "See you later. Work it out for yourself.
Off you go. Figure it out."
So so many people are struggling to exist, that they don't have the brain space to then be like, why am I the way I am?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And is there a benefit of understanding why I am how I am? And when I've worked out why I am who I am, do I want to change it?
Yeah.
And if I change it, what does that look like, or what could that look like? And that's a massive thought experiment that when you're working 12 hours a day to put food on the table,
Yeah.
I don't think you're afforded the space. So I always define myself as a working class lad done well. My mum and dad worked in manufacturing, hospitality at very low wages.
Yeah.
My grandmother was a nurse, so a professional. And I was raised by my grandparents. That's a whole sordid childhood trauma conversation that we don't need to go into. So I've got the trappings of middle class, but the upbringing of working class.
Yeah.
So it's really, really interesting to get into conversations of, well, I just didn't fit in and I wanted to find out why. That's really cool for you. I left an organization that I deeply admired last year. And the founder, who's a friend, said, "What do you want from your life?" I was like, nobody's ever asked me that. I don't even know where to start on the conversation of what that looks like. And then you kind of like boil down to finding that ikagi. What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What do people actually need?
Yeah.
And can you get paid doing that? So the last bit's the bit I'm working on. It tends to be having conversations with folk because I'm quite personable. Okay, but am I personable because I've got a learnt response to people pleasing because I'm an outcast?
Yeah. Yeah.
I do empathy wrong. I posted this last week. The right kind of different. I'm not the right kind of different. It was National Inclusion Week last week, and I very nearly wrote a blog about how I was unemployed because I've been out. I've been working for myself for 14 months. Yeah, I know why people do or don't want to work with me. Luckily, some people do want to work with me. I'm a bit like Marmite, or maybe Vegemite, which is not as nice as Marmite. But anyway, what then drew you to actually seeking out a diagnosis? You're doing some work in learning difficulties. You're doing some neurodiversity stuff. You're seeing some stuff, thinking, "Yeah, that's me." What moved you towards? I don't want to say wanting the label, but that's what's drawing me there.
Yeah. Okay. And it's interesting listening to you because I think the label is just one part of a really complicated jigsaw puzzle. And I was also the free school meals child at school. And that with itself comes with this element of shame to some degree. For me, it felt like, I didn't quite even fit into I lived in a very middle class area, and I always remember I used to get these little tickets that gave me my lunch every day, and I used to go to lunch by myself because I didn't want people around me to know I was on free school meals. And I dropped one and it had my name on the back, and I remember a boy in my class giving it back to me once, and it was the most mortifying moment. I was so embarrassed that I had been discovered. So I think I've always had this feeling of desperately trying to fit in, desperately trying to fit into what everybody else around me is doing and being. And the organizations I've worked for are full of incredibly intelligent people that fairly often come from a very different background to me. And I think I got to a point where I just felt really tired of trying to merge myself to be this person that people expected of me, as opposed to who I really was. And it actually almost got me into trouble at work, in that I got put into a leadership role, and I loved my job, but I will openly admit, and people who work for me, I don't love managing difficult situations at work. I find it really challenging. A bit of me is a bit like I think because I've had to work so hard all of the time to show up and get a job done, and whether that's the ADHD, and it probably is the ADHD that is coming through there, that when people don't do a good job, I find it really frustrating. I find it quite challenging to deal with. And yeah, I think there have been times where I have tried to emulate those around me, and actually it's not done me justice by doing that. And it's also exhausting. So I think a few years ago now, I made a decision that I was going to start to just show up as me at work. And there's an element of vulnerability about that. And I did feel like I was sticking out by doing it that way. And for me, I guess it's not nice to feel like you stick out. And I just wanted to know why I felt that way. And the diagnosis for me was just almost validation. It was confirmation. It was actually, do you know what? My brain does work differently. I do experience emotions more intensely than the normal person sat next to me. I do look at a problem at work and want to change it. I want to make things better. I want to fix it. I want to be innovative and creative and make things different for people. But not everybody is comfortable with that. And I had a director I worked for once that actually said to me, he said, "You do realize that not everybody thinks like you, Tania?" And it was like, whoa, really? It was almost like, like looking back now, it's like the most obvious thing in the world. But
when somebody said that to me, I was like, no shit, they're idiots.
Yeah. There's that as well. No. Yeah. I was just like, I don't really. Why wouldn't you want to like make this process work more effectively? Or yeah, so it was very funny. But yeah, I think for me the ADHD diagnosis was all about validation and acceptance. And I think the acceptance piece has multi layers to it. And I think initially I was looking at acceptance from those around me, from those to people to understand me. So when I first got it, I talked about it a lot. I was very vocal about it. I was like, right, I want you to accept me for me now. But actually, I think the more powerful thing was the acceptance of myself. And that took a bit more time to come to terms with that acceptance. It wasn't going, oh, I've got ADHD and now everything makes sense and I now feel like I've got my life sorted out. It genuinely wasn't that. It took a little while for me to get to the point where I was like, okay, some of this stuff I'm never going to be able to fix. Some of this stuff I just need to accept is how my brain works. I need to be okay with that.
Yeah. I just realized that it's my 2-year anniversary of my assessment this month.
Yeah.
I didn't even know ADHD Awareness Month was a thing October 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Me neither.
And I was involved in Cubs and Scouts, and I turned around to the current Cub leader, because I was the former Cub leader, and I was like, I've got ADHD. She's like, no shit. So, I think that there's definitely a benefit about calling out something or labeling something. this same founder that I was speaking about earlier started just verbalizing what was going on in her head. So, when she was bored, she would just say, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Just to get it out, just to make it real.
Yeah.
Or, when there was a difficult situation, verbalizing nausea,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do here. I actually feel sick. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I've started doing some of that. But, when you're working at home and your wife's off camera, not now, this is my office, but inside, just randomly talking to yourself, it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
But, there's that whole conversation of acceptance, value, and worth is such a big thing for so many people that I don't know if I see a value in valuing myself. A deeply philosophical conversation. But yeah, I was on my way home with my wife and my eldest back from sixth form last week. And we got into the hypothetical conversation of who we would save in this catastrophic situation. So my eldest was like, I'd jump in front of a bullet for you. Actually, he said a bullet train. So I was like, hang on a second. Those two very different things. Why would you jump in front of a train? Anyway, and then we had all of these deeply philosophical questions to go, well, the most important person in the world is...
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if there was the choice between some kid who's born recently, who's going to invent the way to stop climate change and save the human race, we're not going to get to Interstellar. We're all going to die because there's not going to be any food. You got this kid or me, and one of us has to die.
Yeah.
Well, I would rather die knowing that I saved the human race.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then this deeply philosophical debate about, well, why aren't you valuing yourself? Because you're valuable to us and the family and I was like, yeah, but I've just saved the human race in this, hypothetical made-up situation.
Do you know what? I find that I can apply that on a in my world, in that it's like the reason I am so vocal about my ADHD, the reason I talk about it, the reason I share about it is because despite sometimes how career limiting, I've said that word out loud many times, about actually sometimes I say things and I'm like, are people going to think of me differently as a result of saying this? How people might judge me, how people might view me as a person. And for me, if me talking out helps one other person get an answer to a question, or helps a group of people to start thinking differently, then, and this is where it links back, the value of me kind of is irrelevant because it's helping others to think differently. So I'm willing to be vulnerable and make that sacrifice to change something for somebody else, because the one thing that I want is that I don't want people to experience life like I have at times. And if I can help one person have a different experience because they can learn from something that's happened to me, then I'm happy to do it. And I don't know, maybe that sounds, it's not selfless. Maybe it's self. I don't know. I don't know where it sits in. It just.
No, I'm so with you on that. So through all of my learnings, regular viewers are going to get really bored with me spouting the same thing. But I was raised in the last 10 years in workplace psychology, looking at Maslow and Jung and Carl Rogers, Marshall Rosenberg and nonviolent communication. That there is so much that we do because intrinsically we need to. And sometimes that act of being selfless is selfish, because actually we want to be valued or appreciated or give back or contribute, and that's our need, and we do that by being vulnerable. So many people see that selflessness, but is it actually selfless? My wife's going through some stuff at the moment about narcissistic parents, and the conversations are amazing. It's like, you're this type of narcissist because you go and do charity work. I was like, well, I go and do charity work because I work for myself. I've got time in my diary and I'm helping people in need. How's that bad? So, well, you're doing it for the recognition. I was like, yeah, that's why loads of people do stuff. So the reason why you ask for a promotion is because you want the recognition. The reason why you join the army and are proud when you get a medal is because you wanted the recognition. The reason why you've gone and got that label for your neurodivergence is because you want the recognition.
Absolutely.
So there's so many intertwining conversations, overlapping Venn diagram circles of me, myself, and Irene. But my wife's awesome. I met her at sixth form. She was studying psychology, sociology, media, and another ology. I can't remember. And then we fell pregnant that September after sixth form instead of going to uni. So I'm a bit grey, but I'm not as old as people think I am. I went and saw my school mate on Saturday. He's a year younger than me, nearly to the day. Same month but a year earlier, and his beard's going grey. And I was like, I can't say anything because he's younger than me.
Hopefully, he doesn't listen to this.
I don't have any grey. I occasionally get like the odd one, but that doesn't count. But yeah, up here, that's just The shorter it is, the better. The longer it is, the more grey it's grey there. Not grey. How did we get into this conversation? I love ADHD conversations because they're just like, I'm going that way. I don't know why. The amount of people that definitely aren't going to listen to this because they're like, it's just rambling. So, psychology. How did you get from psychology to where you are today doing neurodiversity type work? What was the journey between the two?
It was a typical ADHD journey, obviously. So I've always loved. The more I learn about myself, I find it fascinating. So I love people. I'm fascinated by people, like genuinely fascinated by people. And I like what I've discovered. I like meeting new people, but I like meeting new people as long as they come and talk to me, as opposed to me have to go and talk to them, because I find that challenging. And I have had this desire, as I said, because I had a tricky childhood, that I wanted to help people. So it's all about helping, and it has been. So I ended up in recruitment because obviously that's helping people. In my brain, I was like, that's
helping people get jobs. That's
helping people get jobs. So but I obviously stupidly left my applying for jobs really, really late. So I was then like, right, we're just going to go and do that. And so I joined an external recruitment consultancy, which was fine. And I enjoyed it, and I was really good at it. And then my dad died. And he died 4 days before my 22nd birthday. So it was quite young to lose a parent. And I then went, right, I just need to put a bit of a pause in all of this, figure out what I want to do. So I went and temped and did some reception work. I got myself into an internal recruitment type role. Did that for a little while. enjoyed that a bit more. And then somebody said to me, I was always bored though. I was always like, give me something else, give me something else, give me something new. So when I was in recruitment, I did training and like induction for recruitment process, for not recruitment processes, for graduates. I did graduate recruitment. I did experienced hire recruitment. I ran assessment centers. So I was always trying to find something else to do. The director that I worked for went, actually, your skill set's quite transferable to this. Come and try this. So I was like, yep, off I went. So I did some data analytics type work for a while, some ops type work, numbers. Then I did an SAP implementation because that was new and different. Then I had 2 kids. Took 4 years off, made cakes, decorated cakes. And then I went back to work and did another ops type role. And then project work. So I've been with the same organisation for 10 years, but in that 10 years, I have changed jobs multiple times into different things. My most favourite, so I did SAP again for where I am now. I also did a bit of big organisational design. My most favourite, which makes me laugh now looking back, is I ran our revenue planning process, which I think is hilarious because my planning skills are absolutely not great. But I did that a couple of times. And then I ended up where I am now. So there is no, for me, my career has been about finding challenge. It's about finding challenge to be able to climb, to be able to progress my career. But it hasn't necessarily followed an obvious path. I didn't go, right, I'm going to be a doctor and start at the bottom and work my way up. It has literally been, right, I'm going to just try lots of different things. I finally found something that feels purposeful. I definitely think I'm finally now in a place where I am starting to feel comfortable with the subject matter, and it's something that I really want to do more in, that where I feel like I'm making a real difference, both internally and externally to the organisation. And it is without a doubt being the most rewarding job I've had so far. So I've got there, but it has taken me 20 years to get there. And who knows what's next? It'll probably still be in this space, but what that looks like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's quite disheartening but reassuring to be in a space where you're responsible for your own work and then seeing how long it actually takes to build something. So, I've been watching comedians, and in the last year, this comedian's really like taken off. He's been doing it since he was 15.
Oh yeah.
He's been doing it 12 years. And I was like, I don't have 12 years to build this. It's like, I've really landed a really nice job. It, really fulfills me. It's taken me 2 decades. I don't have 2 decades. So there's, two sides of that coin to say, Rome wasn't built in a day, so stop expecting stuff to happen.
Yes.
But also, that's a really long road. The problem with the ADHD brain is that you get bored quite quick. I did season 1 of the podcast last year for ADHD awareness.
Okay.
So I started recording in September, and then I put them out across October.
Yeah.
Then I started, whilst doing that, I was volunteering with NIB to organise their inaugural conference. Then Lexic headhunted me to run Neurodiversity Celebration Week.
Yeah.
So that's then Easter, and I'm like, I haven't recorded an episode since October. So then I started re-recording in May, and that episode went up in September. So, it's... Yeah, I think I've now got 19 episodes up as of today. But it's taken a year to put 19 episodes up. And I was like, well, I was meant to be doing them weekly.
But you are still being consistent. So it's not like
Define consistency.
So for an ADHD, I always say the thing that I am most consistent at is inconsistency.
Yes.
Without a doubt. And that actually for me is one of the things I'm trying to give myself a break on a bit more. I'm trying to be kinder to myself when actually I don't show up and do the same thing every single week. And people that can, I am like, I don't understand how you do that. And I am so jealous that you can, because I just can't do it. And it's like, I know I should exercise 3 times a week, and sometimes I do it brilliantly, and sometimes I do 5 times, and some weeks I do absolutely nothing. But like my husband, he will go, right, I'm going to get up an hour earlier and make sure I make my 3rd tick of my exercise this week. And I'm like, I just don't know how you do it.
So I watched a really sad video this last week. So I've been watching these 2 Australian guys like modify cars for like 10 years. They've been going like 15 years on YouTube. And one of the presenters shared a story about his dad passing. So they weren't living close. It was COVID. Loads of stuff happened. And it was his exercise like journey through this lens of the time of his dad passing, falling unwell and all this stuff. And he's 10 years older than me, but ripped. Not like a bodybuilder, but he's an athletic guy, and he's 10 years older than me. And he's like, well, I never really eat bag. I've never really drunk. I grew up on a goat farm. And I'm sitting there going, I need to exercise. Below here is bigger than it should be. But nobody sees it from straight on. I'm like Jeremy Clarkson. When I turn sideways, I'm pregnant. It's just like I need to get rid of this. But I've just got no drive. It's like, I could wake up an hour early, go for a run, and then deal with the kids. Well, because of neurodiversity in the household, I don't go to bed before midnight. So me getting up an hour early would mean that I have like 5 hours sleep. That I can't survive on that. So now we're going for a mile walk once or twice a day. So yesterday we did a mile at lunchtime, and then at like 10 o'clock at night the wife was like, let's go for a walk. And then because we live in like the middle of a village, so there's a couple of like routes around the village that you can do, like a nice circular route. A mile is literally 60 meters from our front door on a loop. So we're going across the back field last night at 10:15, and she's on her phone with a camera on. And all of a sudden the sky lights up, and I was like, are you taking a photo? And she's like, no. I thought I saw a flash. Rain comes. So there we are in the middle of a field with an umbrella at 10:15 last night, absolutely hammering it down, going, should we be out here in a thunderstorm with an umbrella? Anyway, the shower passed in about 3 minutes, and we finished the mile in 18 minutes. So walking speed, that's not too bad. But it's that consistency piece. There's so many people that I listen to for inspiration and motivation. Simon Sinek's just come out as ADHD, and he was talking about the measurement of love. Well, you and your husband love each other, but how much? When was the point in time when you then got to the threshold to say, yes, now I'm in love? You probably don't know. But there's this consistency of interacting with each other, showing care and affection for each other, being compassionate with each other, that at some point it happens.
Yeah.
So when you go to the gym, going to the gym for 3 hours every now and again ain't going to do jack. Yeah. But if you go to the gym an hour, 5 times a week, at some point you will get fit.
Yeah.
You just need to have the consistency. And I'm like, cool. How? So then my access to work was like, oh, I'll put you down for an under desk bicycle. And I was like, my desk's not that high. I can't just.
I've got a treadmill, an under desk treadmill, just there.
An under desk treadmill. So
Treadmill.
you sit on your chair and scoot.
No, I've got a standing desk.
Okay, that like a walking desk.
Walking desk, and I've had it about a month.
Yeah, and you've used it twice.
Don't tell anybody though.
This is on the internet.
Sorry, Ray, if you're watching this, I'm sorry.
But that is 2 times more than you would have used it if you didn't have it.
This is true, yes. And
you've used it 200% more than if you haven't.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've made my money back yet though. It requires me to plug it in and switch it on and find a space in my diary where I don't need to do any writing that doesn't end up like this.
Well, are you doing walking meetings? We were doing walking meetings during COVID. So yeah.
I love walking meetings. I love getting outside on my phone and just going for a walk. And I used to, in my role before this one, I used to do it with my boss all the time. It's like we'd go and do the school run. We'd both be on the school run, we'd walk to school and just have our meeting on the phone. And it was brilliant. They're just not happening at the moment. Everybody likes to see me and I don't understand why.
Because you're personable and nice to be around.
Thank you. But I definitely think less video meetings would be amazing and more just, let's just chat. Let's not, I'm sorry, I don't mean that about this, but there are some meetings that don't require that physical presence. And actually, so if I am on a call where I don't have to be on camera, I'm often with my feet up on the windowsill like this, like that, thinking and talking. And I think sometimes you probably get
a better version of you
out of me because I'm not like, all right, I must make sure I'm
engaging
in this way. Yeah.
Well,
so,
ironically, in my last proper job, you know, I had such rapport with colleagues that I'd do that on camera. I'd just be like, yeah, so you can't see it because the camera's too thin, but still. And
I do with certain people at work. I can just kind of like, la, la, la. I don't sing at them, obviously, because that would be weird. And it's nice to have that sort of relationship with people at work, to be able to just go, do you know what? I'm just going to look out the window and talk to you because you don't need me. I don't know why this is necessary all the time.
Because we're trained to actively listen and look into your eyeballs. So look at the camera, because then you think that I'm looking at your actual eyes because I'm looking at the camera rather than your picture.
Let's just be fair. We're looking at ourselves, really, though, aren't we?
Yeah, but that's why you put your picture right next door to the camera, so then it looks like you're looking at the camera when you're not. But you know, I'm a coach. I'm a trained mediator. I'm doing workplace investigation stuff now as well.
Yeah.
And allowing people to feel heard is really, really important.
Yeah.
And the difference between this and that is actually quite impactful. Although it's really weird to try and show that I care, because what I want to do is look at you and what you're saying, not you, so you think that I'm looking at you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's all weird.
It is a very weird world. But also, like, part of my ADHD is that I think I said I love people, but I also need to not be around people as well. So I find the sensory like if I go into the office, for example, I love being in the office. I love the noise of the office. I love catching up and having coffees. I get no work done because I can't work in that environment. Or if I have to go on a call, I have to go and hide in a booth because I can't focus if I've got all the noise coming in. But I find do find it like I need time to almost decompress post that noisiness. So I had a couple of weeks ago, I had a few days which were really intense, pushing me out of my comfort zone, big groups of people, big new groups of people, and I absolutely loved it. But at the end of it, it's like, I now need to go and lie down.
Yeah.
And I love doing it, but I need to almost go, right, I now just need time to just let my brain almost readjust. So yeah, I think the working world at the moment is a fascinating place. I want to do the face-to-face stuff, but sometimes it's just nice not to have to look at somebody.
Well, the other day I had a phone call booked in my diary, and then as I'm searching for the link to click, my phone rings, and I'm like, it's the olden days.
Oh, somebody dialed a number?
I was like, do you know how hard it is to write the 11 digits instead of just clicking a link? It's like, yeah, what did I have to do the other day? I was adding somebody to something, and I needed to put the phone number in. I was like, this is the most I've written in like a week. No, just click a link or drag a thing. We're getting so lazy.
Yeah.
I just want it now. Cool. So we've been going about an hour.
Yeah.
What I tend to do at this point is have a conversation with you about something that you really want to talk about. Something that we may have already touched on, but you want to go deeper into, or something that we haven't touched on that you want to get out there.
Yeah.
So Charlie's episode, she talks about the loss of Iggy. There's all kinds of different frames from different people about neurodiversity in their lives and all of that stuff. A couple of people, it's promoting their new thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just a bit of floor space to is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't?
I guess for me, I wouldn't mind touching upon some of the work that I have done in the last couple of years, and around the neuro inclusion piece in a workplace. So I find myself in a incredibly privileged position, working for a large organisation that is really invested in neurodiversity, which is very, very unusual. So the work that we've been doing in the UK has been quite, it's different to what others are doing, and that has been quite interesting in itself, because some people don't like different, and so it's taken a little while to explain what different feels like, and it evolves, and the impact it's having and the ripples it's having. And I think for me, it's been a real opportunity as somebody who is neurodivergent, being involved in a project where I can actually bring in my own lived experience to help shape something. And one of the things that I am incredibly passionate about is almost removing the barriers for individuals to get into large organisations who are neurodivergent. So, yeah. And
without the barrier of graduate schemes, and do you have a bachelor's in? And
absolutely, and getting people to think differently. So I was at a conference last week, and they were talking about non-traditional routes into technology roles, and what people tend to recruit for technology roles are computer science graduates. And what they were showing was the gap between how many computer science graduates we've got coming through, which is pretty static in terms of numbers. They're not, the universities aren't doing more courses, and the amount of technologists we're going to need for the future of work over the next 10 years. And the gap was quite significant. And they were suggesting that one of the things we should think about is bringing people that aren't computer science graduates into technology roles. And I was like, okay. and yeah, absolutely. But does it go far enough? So I was that horrible person that asked the really difficult question around at what point do we move away, particularly at the graduate level, of recruiting well-rounded individuals, and we flip it to what are the skills that we need to demonstrate for a position, as opposed to going, they have to have great presentation skills, they have to be able to communicate well, they have to be able to be technically strong, they have to tick all of the boxes. And we talk about this a lot. It's like, actually, if you took somebody, and I am talking about extremes here, but if you took somebody who's dyslexic, for example, severely dyslexic, who really struggles with written word and getting into the detail of a really structured document, and then you paired that person with somebody who's potentially autistic, who loves the detail, you've got two people that bring incredible strengths to a team, but have the support that they need for the things that they find challenging from somebody else, as opposed to it being, you have to try and figure out a way to get this done yourself. So I think for me, it's all around, how do we start changing people's perceptions of the type of people they recruit into organizations, so that you start to build neurodiverse teams, and that is a benefit to both the individual, they're in an environment where they can thrive, but also the organization in terms of harnessing the strengths of that talent they've got coming through. So yeah, I get a little bit on my soapbox around this, but I think
and I think you're right too. So yeah, I live in the same village as Belbin's global headquarters.
okay.
So Meredith Belbin in the 70s wrote lots and lots and lots of stuff about teaming. So how do you build effective teams? Yeah. And actually, if you've got a load of people who are ideas folk and no complete finishers, then you're not going to get anything done.
Correct.
And if you've got loads of analytical people who aren't ideas people, then you're never going to innovate, and then you're going to never grow, and then you're going to stagnate.
Yeah.
So we're already having these conversations as OD teams, as HR teams, as operational leaders in what skills do we need within this team to enable this team to be the best it can be? Why aren't we having those conversations at a slightly different, more granular level, to say, actually, this person is really analytical, and they're analytical because of these reasons.
Yeah.
But instead of just focusing on the strengths, and this is why I don't like the superhero narrative.
Yeah.
But actually, everybody, to be a well-rounded person means that some people need support. So why aren't we actually offering them that support? And that might be, they've got a EA that deals with their emails.
Yeah.
It might be that, all of the reports they're ever going to write are mind maps. There's so many different ways of getting information out of people that isn't the traditional thesis.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we are now. It's how do you move that on? So for me, the biggest barrier into organizations, as I said, is recruitment. How do you think about recruitment differently? So when I sat down with our head of experienced hire this time last year, and we were talking about recruitment, and I was talking about what I wanted to do, what I wanted to change, how I wanted it to feel for the individual coming through. And her words were, so basically you want to create an anti-recruitment process. And I was like, yeah, basically that's what I want to do. I want to get the questions up front. I want to stop thinking about, are they making eye contact? I want to stop making people turn up in clothes they feel uncomfortable in. I want to stop judging them. Not that I would personally, if they had purple hair and an earring. Just, why are these things important? but I've been in recruitment such a long time that I know the people that are currently hiring have probably gone through the same training that I went through, where you are going, okay, yes, they must make eye contact in this interview. They must be able to communicate clearly and concisely. Not a skill of mine. I have ADHD, and it's trying to change some of those really, really minor ideas around how people should show up as to whether or not they're employable. That I think it's simple stuff. It's not hard.
Or you know, for me, there's a massive conversation about meritocracy, and there's an ongoing debate whether or not meritocracy is actually discriminatory or ist. Okay, well, you know, the fastest sprinters in the world are men. Well, that's sexist. No, it's a fact.
Yeah.
You know, the best mother in the world is a woman. Well, yeah, because men can't have kids.
Shows that, yeah.
Etc. Etc. Etc.
Yeah.
I think it's more important about what we're measuring and how we measure what we measure. So actually, what we want is somebody who can concentrate really well on really minute detail on this thing.
Yeah.
Or they didn't interview well. Well, it's a good thing that we don't need them in meetings or to interview people.
Exactly that. Exactly that. So why do we use an interview to assess somebody who we don't need to be
that
communicating in a that sort of way? So yeah, I think like we gave everybody interview questions up front, and some people were like, "Whoa, why would you do that?" And I was like, "Well, why wouldn't you? You take the anxiety away. People feel prepared. There's so many reasons why."
And even in education, before COVID, there was open book exams.
Yeah.
Hey, you know that you're going to be tested on something in this book. Here's the book.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yeah.
You've got an opportunity to prepare. Now, okay, you might not prepare the right thing, but at least you're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
And what is a thesis if it's not an open textbook exam?
Absolutely.
So go write a thing that you're passionate about. So I'm a massive advocate for away from assessment centres, just trial shifts. Get the guy in for 4 hours and give him the day job.
So we do work simulations. Exactly that. Yeah. It's a 3-day work simulation. It is all about I am trying to figure out what are their technical skill set, how do they approach something if they don't know the answer, and how are they engaging? And that doesn't have to be verbally, that can be written in the chat. And that's what I'm looking at over 3 days. And that gives me enough information to work out whether or not they are suitable for a role.
Yeah.
And also it allows them the space to get to know us. It allows them the space to understand what's going to be expected of them when they walk through the door. It is a big commitment, obviously, but it's the US have been doing this for years, so it's
are you reimbursing them?
No. Not for the time.
Well, that's a future question.
Yeah. Although,
how inclusive is it for a working class lad to take 3 days off of work to interview for a role? But that's because we don't talk about wealth and class in.
No, but bear in mind the people that I am hoping to hire are unemployed or underemployed. Yeah. And there absolutely is flexibility, and we do have those conversations and build that in. So, for example, one of the biggest pieces of learning I took from our first centre was like sometimes you have got to ask the right questions. So we leveraged a lot of the US documentation, and actually in their documentation it said please come in business dress. There was an assumption they had a laptop, etc. So we've now gone, I pointed out I don't care if they're wearing a hoodie for 3 days, it doesn't make any difference to me, because we had somebody go out and buy clothes for our interviews, and that made me feel really uncomfortable. and the same individual bought a laptop in order to be able to do it, and she was not in a place where that was financially viable for her at that point. She was successful, she got the role, but that made me feel really uncomfortable. So we now ask, do you need to come into the office to use a laptop, or a office? It doesn't have to be the one that you'd be working in, and point out that actually, do you know what, dress is not going to be the difference between you being offered a job and not being offered a job. Clothes preferable, I would just mean not what.
I once didn't offer a guy because he did a whole presentation for 40 minutes with his fly undone. I was like, if you're going to be presenting and representing the company, you would have thought to check yourself before you come and present to us.
Yeah,
especially when you stark trousers and a white shirt. I was like, it's like a bullseye. You can't miss it.
Oh dear. Yeah, I think there's it's an area that has such a huge impact on people's ability to have a decent quality of life. If you can't get in through the door of an organisation, that is the difference between money and no money, isn't it? So this, for me, if there's one thing that I would talk about day in, day out, it's trying to get people to think differently. And the reason I asked the challenging question at that conference last week, and I went and spoke to the people who were presenting, was not because I was testing them. It was because I wanted the rest of the people in that room to hear the question, because I want them to walk away and go, actually, what are we not doing enough of? Or what can we do differently? So yeah, that's me off my soapbox.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to stand on it some more. But I'm in two minds over the recruitment conversation. If 15% of the populace are neurodivergent, then what are you doing for the people already in work?
Absolutely.
Running at 80% because they're spending 20% of their time masking.
Yeah. And you know what? It doesn't stop there, and that's the follow-on conversation I then have, because you've got to unblock the opportunities. So you've got to start somewhere, in terms of opening up those opportunities, but it cannot stop when they walk through the door. And I heard a really interesting statistic last week from somebody around the number of people that are on autism at work programs that are unhappy in their work. So what we are doing is what is the environment that needs to be created in order to make individuals thrive in the workplace. So absolutely, it cannot stop. And then there is a bigger question as well, in that, okay, so you unblock the opportunities for those that couldn't get through a traditional recruitment process. You then get them into the organisation, you give them the support they need. And then the bigger question is, but then what else are you doing for the population that did get through the traditional recruitment route to make them feel comfortable at work as well? So it's multi-layered. And one of the things that we found is that actually starting with that population that potentially might have more challenges because they can't get through that traditional recruitment route has had massive ripples across the rest of the organisation, because what we are learning we can apply at a grander scale.
To different marginalised groups. So then you can look at women in tech, and you can look at returning mums and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has been a really fascinating couple of years in terms of how quickly you can move the thinking along around a subject within an organisation of the scale of where I work. So we're not perfect, absolutely. We've still got things that we need to do, absolutely. But you've got to start somewhere. And starting, I think, is better than doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and teaching somebody to swim and then letting them swim in a shark-infested pool
absolutely
probably isn't a wise idea.
No,
so why don't we tame the sharks?
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Or remove them.
Yes. Absolutely.
But
So
yeah,
yeah.
I had to edit a previous episode because somebody's quite outspoken on these diversity, autism at work type projects.
Yeah.
Because there's the potential risk of exploitation. You've got these people who may be vulnerable, and you think that you're giving them an opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise have, and in doing so may not necessarily be giving them the rights, privileges and benefits that somebody who came through the traditional route might. I'm not saying that any organization does or doesn't do this, but there are rumors that some do, that actually through this program you're not on the same type of benefits as somebody through the graduate program. Well, why is that? Well, because they're not a graduate. Yeah, but all the post-grad piece of paper tells you is that you can sit still for 3 years and listen. It doesn't. You by the time you come through a selection process, then you've both been deemed to have the skills necessary for the role. So why is there any prejudice or discrimination between two individuals? I
understand that.
Coming into the fairness conversation, I think it's definitely an ADHD trait. It might be a wider neurodivergent thing, but right and wrong is a really big thing. So you were saying that back at primary school, you were a people pleaser and always followed the rules. Well, that's because you thought the rules were right and you wanted to do the right thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
I always ignored the rules. Well, because the rules are kind of was it Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean? Parlay. It's more like guidelines. So the rules are there, but sometimes the rules need testing. And that's why you get expelled, Richard, or fired.
I find that I find that rule following. I've definitely had the flexibility to stop following the rules recently in my role, and that's the only way you can innovate in an organisation of size. There are rules that obviously I have to follow, but like the recruitment piece and this anti-recruitment process, that was all about breaking the norm, breaking the guidelines and thinking about it in a completely different way. And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a recruitment team that were more than happy to try it. As opposed to, I could have been met with, well, why on earth would we do this differently? So I am no longer the rule keeper. I have been because I probably would have been expelled at school as well myself if I had been that person. But I'm allowed to now do that, which is fantastic, because I think that's where creativity and innovation and harnessing the strengths of my brain really do help change things.
Yes. Whose episode was it? Alia's. So Alia Costa has written a book on communication and coaching and stuff, and then she got diagnosed ADHD, and now she's rewriting her book with all of the mistakes in it because now she's ADHD. She's like, why would you ever want somebody to do it that way? And she talks a lot about bookmarking and bookending conversations. So ADHD folk don't take control of conversations. So actually just putting the pin in it and saying, great, thanks. That's really helpful. Instead of going, oh, that's really interesting. Now let me chase this white rabbit for another 20 minutes on my thing that I don't actually need to talk to you about, but it's there. So it's just going, I'm just going to stand still for a minute and see if that white rabbit disappears, because if it does, then I don't need to chase it.
I love that.
But yeah, it's a constant mind game of keeping up with conversations and seeing where it'll go. But yeah, we're approaching an hour and 20, an hour and 30 in, and yeah, it's been an awesome chat.
Thank you.
So, where can people find you if you want to be found?
LinkedIn is probably the best place. I share a lot of what I'm doing day to day on LinkedIn. So yeah, that would probably be the best place to come and connect or follow, whatever people feel comfortable with.
And not harass or harangue or
harangue. I'm useless at responding to messages, so if people message me directly, bear in mind it may be a month before you get a response. So
I was lucky.
Yeah, you were. I recognised your name. I was like, what does he want? Yeah. So.
Richard. Oh, Richard.
Yeah. He's emailed me before. I know him. Yeah, that's fine.
I'm intrigued. What does he want? Were you expecting a bigger ask then?
No, I don't know. I wasn't expecting anything. I was like, but what does he want? So yeah. I get quite a lot of messages, but bear with me. I do reply to people, but sometimes it can take a little while. It's just another inbox, isn't it?
Yeah.
My work inbox is big enough without having another inbox.
Well, and that's kind of the challenge that I have with supporting all the non-profits that I support, is that we've got a charity fundraising quiz for the Scout group on Saturday night. So we've made a new email, so people booking quiz tickets can email that email, and we can keep track of everyone who booked. We also put a phone number on the advert, so not everyone's coming through the email. So I still have a spreadsheet with everybody on, because just faff. So I'm supporting 4 non-profits. Me, myself, my other side hustle business, which is a bit geeky because it's all about like models and stuff. And then my gaming email, because I don't want like my personal email being used on like my Xbox.
Yeah.
And then my Scout fundraising email, and then so just on emails I've got like 7 or 8 like mailboxes, and then you've got Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and I need a social media manager just to like manage and also curate everything that I post, because for some reason I have a habit of upsetting people. But you're not one of them, so I upset Charlie. She nearly blocks me.
Oh.
But she's come on the podcast now, so obviously that's all cool.
Yeah. I tend to find that people with ADHD tend to have quite short memories. I know I do.
I don't. I have a very, very, very good long-term memory. Now, so I remember going to like an associate day with the last organisation I was with. So I was in like the head office team finding work for associates to deliver. And we had this associates team meeting. I was the DPO of this consultancy. And it kind of like got to that stage of the agenda for the day, and everyone looked at me and went, "Yeah, I'll come to it later." And I totally like didn't even like register the fact that it was my turn to get up in front of 80 people and talk about something really important, and just brush it off. And then like 4 hours later, they're like, "Well, we didn't do data protection today," and I was like, "You didn't call me," and I was like, "We did. You said, nah, we'll do it later." So that's like one of the only times that I've been like, how did I like miss that?
Yeah.
But I can remember very specific emails or conversations from like a really long time ago.
Wow.
So even now my old company call me and go, "Richard, what's the thing for this?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And they're like, "How?" And I was like, "It just exists." I don't know how.
Not work that way. It's got lots of useless information about internal stuff at work, that I can have conversations with people at work that make no sense to anybody else looking in, but it doesn't tend to retain it. It's like people go, "Do you remember that time we did this?" I went, "No," and then they started telling me a bit more, and I was like, "Oh yeah." So I do definitely have this brain that just
ways of passing information. It's like, you haven't yet met the threshold for me to understand the situation. Give me some more information.
Yeah.
Oh, now I've got it.
Yeah, it's literally like that. And that's why I take lots of pictures. I've got a very visual memory, so I take a lot of photos, and that's how I remind myself of things that happened.
Bad.
So.
Cool. Well, it's been lovely. I can see the sun coming in. That's your prime excuse to get outside into nature.
Let's go and walk the dog.
Fab. What type of dog have you got?
She is a working Cocker Spaniel.
Cool.
Yeah, and she was a year yesterday. She's been wandering in and out the whole way through.
I haven't picked it up.
She hasn't jumped up at me, which is what she usually does. Suddenly get this dog appear. But she's been quite chilled. So
the good thing about being in my outside office, it's an attached old coal bunker to the house. It's 6 foot square. It's not very big.
Yeah.
But I've thrown an Ethernet cable out of the bedroom window, so I've got gigabit internet, and it has lights. So yeah, it means that my 5 cats don't sit on the table meowing or walk across in front of you.
Yes. Yeah.
Just or just have a scrap, because they're known to do that.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than just chilling, working, and hearing like the ruckus behind you of something atrocious going on.
Yes.
And it's because 2 of them have decided they wanted to sleep on the same bed at the same time and don't want to do that. Just it's all a bit mad. Anyway, Tania, it has been absolutely lovely having you on, and this will go up in a week or 2.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Awesome. See you in a bit.
Bye.
Bye.